was a cool, quiet evening when Anya unlocked the creaky iron gates of the mansion that had stood abandoned for decades. The house was hers now, inherited after her parents passed away, and she planned to renovate it, sell it, and move on with her life. The structure was massive, its once beautiful facade now cracked and covered in ivy. As she stepped inside, the air felt heavy, almost oppressive, as if the house was holding its breath. "This is home now," she whispered to herself, clutching the heavy brass key that had come in a dusty envelope weeks ago. It was her inheritance, a legacy she neither wanted nor could refuse. The villagers had spoken of the house with hushed voices and sidelong glances. "It's cursed," one of them had said. Another had warned, "Bad things happen there. People don't stay for long." But Anya, with her practical mind and desperate need for a fresh start, had dismissed their superstitions. The door groaned as she stepped inside. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of damp wood and mildew. The hallway stretched before her, its walls lined with tall mirrors framed in ornate gold. Dust covered their surfaces, dimming their reflections, but even in their murky state they seemed to watch her. One mirror in particular caught her attention. It was larger than the rest, standing in the farthest corner of the hallway. Its frame was intricately carved with symbols she didn't recognize, and its surface seemed to shimmer faintly, as though alive. Anya shook her head. "Stop imagining things," she muttered. But as she turned away, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The house was eerily silent, save for the creaks and groans of its old wooden frame. Anya set up a small mattress in the living room, deciding to clean and explore the rest of the house in daylight. She fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the journey and the emotional weight of her decision. At first her sleep was dreamless. Then came the tapping. Tap, tap, tap. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open. The sound was faint, like knuckles against glass. She sat up, her heart pounding as the noise grew louder. Grabbing her phone, she turned on the flashlight and followed the sound to its source. The large mirror in the hallway loomed before her, its surface shimmering faintly in the dim light. The tapping stopped as soon as she stood in front of it. Anya's reflection stared back at her, but something was wrong. Her reflection wasn't normal. It seemed slower, delayed. She tilted her head to the right, and a second later, the reflection followed. "Hello?" she whispered. Her reflection smiled. She stumbled back, dropping her phone. Her heart raced as she scrambled to pick it up, her eyes never leaving the mirror. But when she looked again, the reflection was normal. No smile, no delay. "I'm just tired," she muttered, retreating to the living room. But sleep didn't come easily after that. The next morning, Anya decided to explore the house in earnest. The rooms were filled with dust-covered furniture, old photographs, and trinkets from a bygone era. In the attic, she discovered a locked chest. The key she found nearby opened it, revealing a leather-bound diary. The diary belonged to her great-grandmother, Devika. As she read through its yellowed pages, a chilling story unfolded. Devika had written about a maid named Mira, who had worked in the house decades ago. Mira was loyal, hard-working, and kind, until the day she fell to her death from the staircase. "An accident," Devika had written, "but I feel her presence still, angry, betrayed." The entries grew darker. Devika described strange occurrences, objects moving on their own, laughter echoing in empty halls, and whispers in the dead of night. In a final, desperate attempt to rid the house of Mira's spirit, Devika had performed a ritual to bind the spirit to an object. That object, Anya realized with growing dread, was the large mirror in the hallway. But the ritual hadn't worked as intended. "The spirit is trapped," Devika wrote, "but it waits. It watches, and it wants to be free." That night, The house seemed alive. The mirrors reflected things they shouldn't. Shadowy figures moving in the background. Objects that weren't there. Anya woke to whispers, louder and clearer than before. Anya. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. The voice was soft, almost seductive. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. The whisper came again, this time from the mirror in the hallway. She grabbed her flashlight and walked toward it, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Her reflection smiled at her. Then it spoke. "Let me out," Anya screamed, stumbling back. The mirror's surface rippled, and for a moment she saw a dark figure pressing against the glass, as though trying to break through. She ran back to her room, locking the door behind her. Morning brought no comfort. Anya sat on her makeshift bed, clutching a cup of coffee, her hands trembling. The sunlight filtering through the broken windows did little to dispel the memory of the voice, or the unnatural smile on her reflection. Desperate for answers, she reread the diary, combing through every word. Devika's final entries offered a chilling warning. The mirror is not just a prison, it is a door. If the spirit gains enough strength, it will escape. To stop it, one must complete the ritual. But the instructions for the ritual were incomplete, the last pages torn out. Determined to learn more, Anya ventured into the nearby village. The villagers were wary of her questions. Many avoided her altogether, muttering prayers under their breath when she passed. Finally, an elderly shopkeeper relented. "The mansion has always been cursed," he said, his voice low. "Your great-grandmother wasn't the first to try and trap that thing. The mirror holds it for now, but it's getting stronger. You need to leave before it's too late." "I can't leave," Anya replied, her voice trembling. "It won't let me." The old man paled. "Then you must finish what Devika started. There's an old temple in the forest near the mansion. The priest there might know how to help." Returning to the mansion, Anya felt the atmosphere grow heavier. The mirror's presence was oppressive now, as though it was watching her every move. That night, she locked herself in her room, hoping to keep the entity at bay, but sleep eluded her. Around midnight, the lights began to flicker. The air grew cold, and the whisper started again. "Anya." She covered her ears, trying to block out the sound, but it grew louder, more insistent. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a notification. Unknown caller. Her heart raced as she hesitated, then answered. "I'm waiting," the voice on the other end hissed. The phone slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. The next day, Anya ventured into the forest, following the old shopkeeper's directions. The temple was ancient, its stone walls covered in moss. Inside, a stooped priest greeted her with a knowing look. "You are from the mansion," he said. It wasn't a question. Anya nodded, her voice shaky as she recounted the events of the past few nights. The priest listened silently before speaking. "The spirit trapped in that mirror is not ordinary," he explained. "It feeds on fear, grows stronger with every moment of hesitation. To banish it, you must perform the ritual completely, but it will not be easy. It will fight back." He handed her a pouch of salt, a bundle of candles, and a wooden carving etched with intricate symbols. "Create a circle of protection with the salt," he instructed. "Light the candles and place this carving at the center. Speak the incantation, and offer something precious to you. Only then will the spirit be forced to leave." "What kind of offering?" Anya asked. "Something irreplaceable," the priest said gravely. Returning to the mansion, Anya prepared for the ritual. She spread the salt in a wide circle in the living room, placed the candles at its edges, and set the carving in the center. As she lit the candles, the house seemed to react. The mirrors on the walls vibrated violently, their surfaces rippling like water. Shadows darted across the room, and the temperature plummeted. From the hallway, the voice came again. "You think you can stop me?" it hissed. The large mirror began to glow, its surface warping. Anya stood her ground, clutching the diary and the carving. "You don't belong here," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "It's time for you to go." The ritual began. She chanted the incantation, her voice growing louder with each word. The shadow screamed in rage, its form emerging from the mirror, a swirling mass of darkness with glowing red eyes. It lunged at her, but the salt circle held it back. As the ritual neared its climax, the shadow's attacks grew more violent. It shattered nearby mirrors, threw furniture across the room, and whispered cruel taunts. "You'll fail, just like she did," it sneered. "And when you do, I'll take you instead." The final step of the ritual required the offering. Anya hesitated, tears streaming down her face as she held a photograph of her late mother, the only keepsake she had left. "I'm sorry," she whispered, placing the photo in the circle. The shadow howled as the circle erupted in light. Its form was pulled back into the mirror, which cracked and shattered, leaving behind only silence. Exhausted, Anya collapsed to the floor. The house felt different, lighter, quieter. She gathered her things, determined to leave and never return. As she locked the door and turned to leave, she caught her reflection in a small mirror by the entrance. It stared back at her, unblinking. Then it smiled. "You freed me," it whispered. "Now it's your turn."